I don't think I'll ever forget the feelings of excitement that I had when I had first saw a glimpse of Dangai Ichigo. In general, Bleach wasn't a show that I had associated with wild, over-the-top transformations. Now sure, it had some in the form of Bankai, but I never felt that they overdid it like how the different Super Saiyan forms were beaten to death in Dragon Ball Z. But when I had first watched Bleach opening 13, with the intention of wanting to check out the latest opening of the series, I saw a brief preview of Ichigo with longer hair and what appeared to be a new incredibly strong form. This visual of Ichigo's hair flowing has stayed with me as one of the most iconic transformations in all of anime and manga, but because we see so little of it, we know barely anything about Dangai Ichigo, and this can lead us to have more questions than answers, and to assume that this transformation had come from nowhere without any explanation. In this video, I want to explain everything that there is to know about Dangai Ichigo, including the details surrounding his change of appearance, how Ichigo underwent such a change, and how he was able to defeat Aizen, who had merged with the Hokyoku and was arguably at the level of a god during their final encounter. So without further delay, let's get into my breakdown and explanation of Dangai Ichigo. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. So before anything, I want to discuss the changes in Ichigo's appearance after he emerges from the Dangai, and prior to activating his Mugetsu form. Chapter 416 is the first time that we see Ichigo in this new form. He is carrying his father over his shoulder and has changed drastically since the last time that we had seen him. Firstly, he is taller in size and has much longer hair as a result of training for 3 months non-stop with holified Tensa Zangetsu. We can see that through his clothes and the shape of his Zanpakuto, he appears to be in his Bankai form, but there is a considerable change that occurs when we pay attention to the handle of his Zanpakuto. We can see that Ichigo has in some way become one with Tensa Zangetsu, as it is now fused onto his arm. In addition to this, the chain of his Zanpakuto has lengthened and is now wrapped around his arm, as his Shinigami Shihakusho has been torn up to his shoulder, further emphasizing the change in how Ichigo is now wielding his Zanpakuto. The final point I want to make about his appearance is that the guard of his sword has also increased in size. So to summarize, two things have changed. Firstly, Ichigo is older and his Zanpakuto is now a part of his body. This change in appearance and form is what we refer to as Dangai Ichigo. He achieves this stronger state of being through training in the Dangai for a prolonged period of time. In chapter 407, Ichigo is giving into despair when he realizes the vast difference in power between himself and Aizen. His father is shocked that Ichigo is actually able to sense the spiritual energy of Aizen. Ichigo had assumed that his father was also able to sense Aizen's spiritual power, but this is far from the case. It is for this reason that he tells Ichigo to follow him, because what other choice does he have? Is he going to sit there and cry about how he can't save anyone? Isshin tells him that there is a reason why Aizen has headed for the real Karakura Town, located within the Soul Society. If Ichigo does nothing, then all of the people that he cherishes and he has desired to protect will die. When they enter the Senkaimon, they make their way towards the Soul Society, but their trip is interrupted when Isshin tells Ichigo to stop, as he realizes that he cannot sense the presence of the Kototsu. It appears that Aizen has done something to it. Fortunately, this works out perfectly for the two of them, as Isshin explains that the Dangai is a separate realm which is cut off from the world of the living and the Soul Society. This means that time and space works differently within the Dangai, and one of the purposes of the Kototsu is to stop people from staying within the Dangai for prolonged periods of time. But now that it's gone, Isshin explains that it gives him enough time to teach Ichigo the final Getsuga Tensho. We can understand that time flows faster within the Dangai in comparison to the outside world, so this distortion in space and time gives the Dangai a similar nature to the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z, where one day is equivalent to 1 year in the time chamber. This explains how Ichigo was able to undergo 3 months of training in a short span of time. As for every year that passes in the outside world, it is equivalent to 2000 years within the Dangai. Ichigo begins his training by sitting with his Zanpakuto placed across his lap, as he is trying to communicate with his blade, as it is the first time that he is entering into his inner world of his own accord. We learn that he has less than 3 months to convince his Zanpakuto to teach him the final Getsuga Tensho. When Ichigo enters into the Jinzen position, Isshin states that up until this point, every technique and form that Ichigo has attained has been through brute force, but on this occasion he has to truly understand his Zanbakudo and take an alternative approach to progress to the next level. This is because the final Getsuga Tensho is a technique that Zangetsu will not want to teach him. When he enters into his inner world, he realizes that it is completely submerged underwater. Upon noticing a hooded figure, he realizes that it is wielding Tensa Zangetsu. This individual tells him that he does not blame him for not recognizing him, since this is the first time that Ichigo has seen his Zanpakudo spirit in his inner world while in the state of Bankai. Tensa Zangetsu is already aware that Ichigo wants to learn the final Getsuga Tensho, and it is for this reason that he is mercilessly attacking Ichigo. He refuses to teach Ichigo such a technique, despite Ichigo needing to learn it in order to protect Karakura Town. But Tensa Zangetsu states that he doesn't care about what happens to the things that Ichigo wants to protect, and that there is a difference between what the two of them desire to protect. When Ichigo questions why Tensa Zangetsu is not helping him, he tells him to look around him. The towering, hopeful skyscrapers have been replaced by a tiny little town, and the second that Ichigo had begun to despair, the downpour had started within his inner world, and it wasn't long before this small town that he desires to protect was sunk to the bottom of the ocean. At this point in the series, Ichigo had stopped moving forward and had lost hope because he became afraid of his inner hollow after the Vastolore transformation. Tensa Zangetsu ends up merging with Hollow Ichigo as he becomes hollowified Tensa Zangetsu. He explains that the two of them make up Ichigo's power, and this is what Ichigo needs to come to realize first and foremost. Even while refusing to teach him the final Getsuga Tensho and appearing to be merciless, it is evident that Tensa Zangetsu still cares about Ichigo and wants him to stop despairing. Now in chapter 420, when we cut back to Ichigo's training, Ichigo is revealed to have longer hair at this point and appears to be taller than before, and he is more determined than ever to learn the final Getsuga Tensho, despite hollowified Tensa Zangetsu still refusing to teach him it. It is then that Ichigo realizes that if his Zanpakudo spirit wanted to defeat him, then he would have done so at the start of their encounter. He then begins to sense loneliness emanating from Tensa Zangetsu's blade, and he realizes that the only way to learn the final Getsuga Tensho was never to do so through brute force, and to get his Zanpakudo spirit to submit to him. On this occasion, like his father had stated, he needs to understand the feelings of Tensa Zangetsu. Ichigo tosses his Zanpakudo aside and allows Tensa Zangetsu to run his blade through him. This is the only way the final Getsuga Tensho can be attained, by accepting Tensa Zangetsu's blade. Ichigo feels no pain despite being impaled, and this is because the blade is a part of him, so as long as he chooses to accept it, he will not feel any pain. Tensa Zangetsu cries as he reveals that which he wants to protect has always been Ichigo, and he is aware that by learning the final Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo will lose his Shinigami powers. This is where the secrets of the final Getsuga Tensho begin flowing into Ichigo through the blade that has just pierced him. So now that we know how Ichigo had attained the final Getsuga Tensho through training in the Dangai, let's now try to understand more about the significance of this transformation and try to understand why his Zanpakudo had merged with his arm. Ever since Ichigo was given the powers of a Shinigami by borrowing Rukia's powers, we had come to realize that he has a lot of latent potential. We know that during the 1000-year Blood War arc, Old Man Zangetsu was revealed to have been suppressing Ichigo's Shinigami and Hollow powers, trying to stop him from progressing and continuing to get into battles that would put Ichigo in harm's way. However, when he had trained within the Dangai, both his Shinigami powers, which were represented by Tensa Zangetsu, and his inner Hollow, who of course represents his Hollow powers, had worked together and merged as one. For the first time, both of these aspects of his abilities had found harmony through unifying. This is the significance of hollowified Tensa Zangetsu appearing. The two aspects of his powers had found harmony, and through this they were able to strengthen Ichigo and help him to transcend to a level beyond a mortal. There are a lot of theories about Ichigo becoming so powerful that he had awakened all of his powers, including his Quincy, Hollow, Shinigami, and human abilities after emerging from the Dangai. While there isn't enough information to confirm this, what I can confirm is that he has transcended and become one with his Zanpakudo. By becoming one with his blade, he understandably had more access to his latent powers. Aizen did say that an individual can reach the level of a transcended being by breaking through the barriers that exist between a Hollow and a Shinigami, and this is why he had experimented with hollowifying Shinigami and turning Hollows into Arankars. Aizen ultimately failed at his experiments and was only able to attain transcendence through the Hokyoku. Ichigo, however, was born from a Shinigami father and a Quincy mother who had been hollowified. He was the perfect case study to achieve transcendence by breaking through the very barriers that Aizen had had tried so desperately to do. Ichigo training and actually becoming one with his Zanbakudo is a testament to the relationship that he has with Zangetsu. Ichigo not only became one with Tensa Zangetsu, he had also merged with his inner hollow, thus allowing him to transcend by accepting both sides of his power. Fusing with his Zanbakudo and attaining harmony between these powers was the key to attaining not only transcendence, but also learning the final Getsuga Tensho. Thankfully, Isshin was aware of this, and by understanding the nature of Ichigo's powers, he had come to the decision to train Ichigo to learn the final Getsuga Tensho, which would have ultimately required him to find harmony with his different powers. Isshin had only thought about this course of action after he had realized that Ichigo was able to sense the spiritual energy of Aizen. Isshin was unable to sense Aizen's power because he doesn't have what it takes to be transcended. Ichigo, on the other hand, thanks to his hybrid nature, does. Through realizing that Ichigo was still able to sense Aizen's spiritual power, Isshin had realized that there was still hope. Ichigo was able to attain transcendence and reach Aizen's level through more conventional means. He did not rely on the Hokyoku, and proof that Ichigo has transcended can be seen through how his Zanbakudo has merged with his arm. This is a similar feat which was achieved by Aizen the moment that he had attained transcendence via the Hokyoku. Now, I hope that this video has helped to explain why Ichigo had to undergo training within the Dangai, and what the significance of attaining transcendence was, and why Tensa Zangetsu had merged with his inner hollow, and why Ichigo had to overcome his despair and become one with his blade in order to protect Karakura Town. I was always confused as to why Tensa Zangetsu and Hollow Ichigo had merged during the Dangai training. I knew that it was significant, but I didn't understand entirely why. Thanks to going through this portion of the story, understanding Ichigo's physical change in appearance and how he had achieved it, I was better able to appreciate the form of Dangai Ichigo, how Ichigo had attained transcendence, how Isshin had known that it was worthwhile to teach him the final Getsuga Tensho at the nth hour. All of this makes sense to me now. I want to know now all of your thoughts about Dangai Ichigo. What did you think about Ichigo becoming transcended and his training with holified Tensa Zangetsu, and not to forget Isshin's quick thinking? Let me know your thoughts about my explanation of Dangai Ichigo, and if you want a detailed explanation about Mugetsu and Ichigo's actual use of the final Getsuga Tensho, then check out my explanation of Ichigo's Mugetsu ability. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.